the session shortly. Welcome to everyone. Welcome to the Inclusive Spaces seminar series at the Bartlett, the Faculty of the Built Environment here at UCL. Today you have joined the April edition of Inclusive Spaces, so welcome. I'm Daniel Fitzpatrick. I'm a lecturer and teaching in planning at the Bartlett School of Planning, UCL, and I'll be hosting this session. Inclusive Spaces is our monthly seminar led by the Bartlett Equality, Diversity and Inclusion group, where we're showcasing the latest research and ideas from world-leading thinkers on all dimensions of diversity in the built environment. So before we begin, a little housekeeping. This session will be recorded and added to the Bartlett UCL Faculty of the Built Environment YouTube channel, the Bartlett EDI website, that's the Equality, Diversity, Inclusion website, and it will be forwarded to the registered attendees. The format for today is that I'm going to first welcome our guests to present for the first half of the session, and that will be followed by a Q&A before ending promptly at 2 p.m. We encourage you to submit a question for the speakers at any point during this lecture by clicking on the Q&A function on the bottom of the screen. You can submit your own questions or upvote others. So I'll be scrolling through and presenting these questions as they come up at the end. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome my colleagues from the Bartlett School of Architecture, Provides, and her collective, Current Collective, made up of Eli, Janzi and Artem. Current is a collective of architects, researchers, artists, CG animators, engineers, data scientists, and programmers. And their digital practice is driven by an interest in the reciprocal relationships between virtual and physical spaces. They will present to us their current research on how technological ideas such as live streaming, culture, volumetric reconstruction, artificial intelligence, AI, and personalisation might act as socio-economic drivers to change in how we circulate values in the attention economy, a digital currency, so to say. So I will hand over to Provides. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you and welcome for joining this session. And let me just quickly share screen. Yeah, so we are the Current Collective. First, let's meet our team. And so, hi, I'm Provides. I'm currently a lecturer at the Bartlett School of Architecture, UCL.
Yeah, hello, my name is Artem, and I'm data scientist at Strelka KB, and I also work and teach like artists how to use, how to implement neural network in their artistic practice.
Hi, I'm Janzi, and as Daniel mentioned, a lot of different intersections in different fields we have in the team, but as you may see, it's not a lot of people there on the photo. So each of us sharing a lot of different knowledges in our brains. So yeah, I'm an engineer, graduated robotics and complex automation department. And yeah, after I went to contemporary art direction, and meanwhile I was practicing my VFX and 3D animation skills. So all this combined in our research.
Yeah,
and last but not least, yeah, Provides.
Yeah, unfortunately, Ellie can't join us today because she's in LA and we're all spread across different time zones. But now let us go to the 4 core ideas that actually make up Current, including volumetric cinema, attention economy, digital persona, and environmental sensing. So we're really interested in speculating on what would happen and what this future might look and feel like at the intersection of these ideas. And the unique question that we're dealing with is that in an increasingly digitized age, how can we bring inclusivity into our spatial design, and how can individuals represent themselves in such spaces? And inclusivity in design comes from an understanding of the diversity in communities. So this highlights the significance of being able to understand the relationship between environmental sensing and human representations. Our Participatory Cinema is an experimental film about how the different perspectives, information sources, and conflicting values might synthesize into new ideas in an increasingly seamless, open-sourced, and three-dimensional media environment.
So yeah, which forms like extended architecture field, like not only physical architecture, but also information architecture and communication architecture and so on.
Yeah, exactly. So how we like to do things is that we would like to let our work speak for itself. And then afterwards, we're going to elaborate a bit more on the idea. And we will be in a discussion together afterwards. So now we'll play the film. It will be around 11 minutes.
世界看到了改革开放的中国加速度，看到了将改革开放进行到底的中国决心。我们改革的脚步不会停滞，开放的大门只会越开越大。很多港澳台居民拿到了居住证，香港进入了全国高铁网。一个流动的中国，充满了繁荣发展的活力。无论国际风云如何变幻，中国维护国家主权和安全的信心和决心不会变，中国维护世界和平、促进共同发展的诚意和善意不会变。我们将积极推动共建“一带一路”，继续推动构建人类命运共同体，为建设一个更加繁荣美好的世界而不懈努力。到来，祝福中国！
Spray guns, gas guns. You shoot the flag! You shoot the flag! You shoot the flag! Journalists! You shoot journalists, motherfucker!
Great. So that was the film. I hope the experience was smooth and you had a great journey. Yeah, so the theme that we'll like to talk about today is participatory cinema. And what do we mean by that? Well, throughout the film, you might have noticed that we have a few ideas, for instance, how different perspectives may help us in reconstructing the world, much like how photogrammetry work. And then we call that blockchain cameras, in the sense that a network of camera may authenticate events and truth amongst themselves. At the same time, we're interested in nonlinear narrative in the sense that when our world is not anymore a montage cut from frame to frame, but we're going into extended realities of world to world, users may be able to navigate the world and the narrative on their own pace. So in a sense, user participation and attention generate the cinema through their interaction with the 3D environments.
Yeah, and it forms this smooth, seamless experience, as you may see from our film. Like it's uninterrupted, one camera mounted shot flying from different worlds, different events, and different perspectives. So
Yeah.
that's what we're trying to show through that effects when camera shifting and showing the other parts of the same event.
Yeah. So in a sense, we really care, what we really are questioning is data representation. So our thinking behind is that as opposed to as users or inhabitants or citizens as passively collected data patterns by centrally managed platforms, is there a way that we can decentralize data collection in a sense that every citizen is voluntarily contributing data to a common data environment for the authentication of truth, but then at the same time for the participation in that the data may assist the design and planning of the city in future. Yeah, and another thing that we really care about is the inclusivity of different vantage points, not only humans, but also non-humans. So in the movie, we try to collect a lot of data from the live streams of animal cams, and these include bear cams or eagle cams or even horse cams. And by no human intervention, these cameras capture data of the natural habitat where the animal is living. And in 2019, when we were making this film, one of the bears in Russia were eating trash in the landfill site because they were really starving due to climate change. And we were able to put that also in the cinema, but in the form of a reconstructed environment. So we reconstructed the landfill site, we reconstructed the forest, and we also reconstructed the path that the polar bear took during the live stream.
So, yeah, Jens, you go.
Besides like animal perspectives, there we also had some like massive environmental perspective cameras, like looking at Amazon forest or some Arctic places. And the thing was that it's hard for the human perception to actually just sit and spend their time just watching this. So that's why we're talking a lot of the neural processing of that kind of like spatial temporal data to condense it in something meaningful for the recipient.
Yeah, like it's impossible to look at the how the planet is changing like with your own eyes, but with the help of remote sensing, like satellite imagery, for example, you can track this process and you can look into these processes in like human understandable time spans. Yeah, like there is quite a lot of examples of this time lapse of the Earth's changing. And yeah, also like Jens mentioned, this neural processing of that kind of data. I think the neural networks can help us a lot to look at the urban environment, at the Earth environment from non-human point of view, because we can use we can reconstruct the environment from videos or from photos or satellite imagery as well. And then we get this 3D environment, which can be in turn in its own turn understood by segmentation neural networks, and we can understand which object in this environment means what. For example, we can reveal these animals or I don't know, cars or buildings, and we can use this data to look at the environment from the point of view of these objects. So it's not only animals, not only humans, but also non-living objects as well. So
yeah, we were really thinking that a network of artificial intelligence will actually enable a distributed learning networks amongst a network of humans and machines. And during the movie, we also test a lot of deepfakes, and we really question with artificial intelligence and with all of the participatory data, the more resolution we get, we also get better technologies in deepfake, but also in hyperreal. So hyperreal is basically adding an additional layer of information onto reality, but does fake and real really have such a clear boundary between them? Aren't they actually informing one another in terms of technology advancement, but then also if it's hyperreal, it's also fake, right? So yeah, those are something that that we care about.
Yeah, posing a lot of question about how developing truth authentication, and the other side is truth modification mechanisms also developing. So we were really interested in what it may result, and yeah, how this modified world can look like.
Yeah. Last but not least, we have the idea of micro-licensing and currency, which is really what we wanted to question today. It's that all the attention economies generated based on these animal camps and based on the participation of citizens, how do we actually direct the generated value to volatile environments in need? And can we basically have a form of licensing that license the animal so that every time it gets viewed or every time its 3D model get used, we generate value through that, and then we feed that back into the preservation of nature. But that actually also problematized the problem, because nature doesn't really care about money. All it cares about is for us to leave them alone. So the attention value generated really is to help us leave nature alone.
And yeah, that's why we one of examples of how to convert attention into value. Back in the days in 2019, we were thinking about digital clothing, and yeah, as you may see on this screenshot, it's a clothing with projected endangered environment and species on that. So that helps to kind of navigate that attention and then value. So this is how more or less CurrenSee may work.
Yeah. So in the last part, before we go into the discussion, we would like to show you our inclusive workshops. In a way, we would like to practice current not just as one cinema, but we really want to exercise the participatory nature of current. So what we did is that we standardized our production pipeline, and then we made it easy, accessible to everybody, including artificial intelligence and other computer graphics animation. Yeah, so these are the workshops that we've been doing internationally, but also interdisciplinarily. A lot of the participants and students you see, they're actually not from fields of architecture or urban design. Some of them are from human-computer interaction. Some of them are from graphics design or data scientists and other fields.
Yeah, so it's also continuation of inclusivity we are talking about, because yeah, we were trying to make this like framework as inclusive as possible. So that's why we're not going deep into some hard coding or something, and we use open source software to expand the brain of our students, and to continue imagine and thinking the world to come. Artem?
No, I think you already said what I wanted to say. Yeah, about the open source like nature of this workshop. So it's basically, I'd say it's not about the pipelines that we designed, but it's a way how we can like think very flexible, very like adjust the pipeline according to our ideas, and not like to stuck on the same software that we learned some time ago, and like experiment with some very emergent technologies like neural networks or VR or something. Yeah, so it's always something new, and I think we're teaching the approach to use this new
yeah,
tool.
so each group came up with their own pipelines, and not even based on the
yeah,
tools we gave to them, but
yeah,
they just
I think it's more like they have this basis of the tools that we are sharing, but as soon as they want to like show their ideas, they always modify it, and some of them adds new tools, some of them use the same tools as everyone, but in a completely different way. So yeah, it's always something new even for us. So we also learn from our students.
Exactly. Yeah, and also in the middle, you see some students from Bartlett School of Architecture. You should have recognized their background. And they're actually students from the BPA program in RC14. And that particular class, we were actually discussing attention economy. And now they're making an urban design project based on the value of attention economy, and how to actually translate that not just in the digital domain, but also in the physical domain. Like, for instance, what are the corners that our attention leave the most, and how to make use of those corners to actually project information in the city, so that we can inform citizens of, let's say, climate change or other types of urgent information.
Yeah, and me and some other colleagues of mine, we also made a workshop on attention, not attention economy, but on this topic of how we can take the data from the landscapes and use this data to finance these landscapes. Also, it was in April last year. Yeah, I guess it's somehow close, and also in Bartlett. Yeah, so you probably can find these outcomes.
Yeah. So these workshops are all free and open to all. At every city we go, some of our participants had zero experience in programming or computer graphics. This basically showed two things: that first, our digital pipeline and interface have been designed in a democratizable way with open source tools available for any individual. And second, that our participants are the most brilliant in that they're really collaboratively resilient and persistent, as they all have to work in teams of 4 and they've never met each other before. I rhymed myself. Okay, so their co-creativity proof anyone can be an active contributor and idea seeder. Citizens are no longer passive consumers of architectural design and services in the age of the digital and the multimedia, and we communicate through mass participation. So just wanted to show you kind of the pipeline that we actually teach. We usually teach, some of the workshop are like a few days, some of the workshops are over 2-3 weekends. And participants are able to generate output from using AI generated text, to inspire them, and then they would train the text on philosopher books that we also suggest to them. So in a sense, it's extracting intelligence from history and also from giants. And then step 2, we will be using neural networks to generate digital persona. And we use AI to generate digital avatar in the sense that, there are topics in data surveillance or data privacy. So if you want to represent yourself in the digital space diversely with a pseudonymous identification, then you may collaborate with AI to generate data representation of alternative forms.
Yeah, I think this part will be updated very soon. I'm working on it right now, so it will generate, will be even more automated and customizable.
Yeah. So Artem.
Another thing to add, we call these workshops like volumetric cinema or volumetric persona, and it's also provokes the students to think about, because volumetric cinema is not something that already formed and has its boundaries. So we together with the students, we trying to actually understand how it may look like and what actually this mean volumetric cinema, and what is what's the new rules, what's maybe how to break the rules that don't exist, for example, didn't exist before. So yeah, actually it's workshop which also forming some field which like not existed before, and it also expands the mind.
Yeah, we really wanted to develop that digital literacy and that criticality together with our students. And yeah, so like for instance, Artem is the artificial intelligence guy per se, and he would be making interface for all the algorithms. So students don't actually need to learn how to code. But then we also receive questions from students sometimes saying that because they're not scripting the AI from scratch, he or she doesn't really know the AI so much, or they don't know how to collaborate with the AI. But then actually what we must remember that we are architects and urban designers and other discipline, we're not all computer scientists. And our job sometimes is just to find application use cases or urban problems that actually are really in need of our attention. And we must collaborate with other talents like programmers, coders, makers, computer graphics animators. So no one knows everything, but collaboration is actually the key.
Yeah, and I think it's always like this kind of collaborations bring like interesting points of view because technical guys like me, we are like very deep into technologies, but we rarely think about like ethical part of this, because it's interesting to implement some feature, but the understanding of where it goes after we release it, it's like not always on our minds, and this is why it's useful to like work together with the people from other disciplines, because they instantly can say like I can use this tool in such and such ways, and this can lead to this and this circumstances. So it's like very great to it's very useful to collaborate to both sides.
Yeah. And maybe a last thing is just to say that we're very lucky current because we met each other at Strelka Institute, and we've been working together for 3-4 years and running just on passion and open source resources with no supporting funding at all. And sometimes we get invited to exhibit at museums. For instance, this is our last exhibition at the Rijksmuseum Twins in Netherlands. And sometimes they would give us artist fee, but then it's really based on the passion of us working together as a collective. And at the same time, we're really blessed in the sense that we're able to connect with the international community through this exhibition. So it's also a way of collaboration through the medium of cinema to give effective and immersive communication meets.
Yeah, exchanging.
Cool. So if you would like to join our workshops and connect with us or discuss with us, you can also follow us on Instagram, which is current.cam, and we're happy to talk anytime. So now we welcome any questions. I think you can turn on your cameras to talk, or you can just type them in the chat.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Provides and the current team. There is a couple of questions. I thought that was an amazing insight into your work, and especially as an artistic practice, but also a deep social environmental critique and also a sort of propositional angle to it. So proposing this new forms of engagement with the environment at the sort of virtual and the real level. There's an interesting question that popped up when you were talking about human and non-human, but to focus on the human, Pips asks, do you think this process could assist in giving designers of the built environment a better understanding of the barriers different disabled people face? And I suppose in addition to disabled people, there's sort of physical disability, but the sort of neurodiverse as well. So I was wondering how have you come across ways of working with disabled and neurodiverse people?
That's actually a great question. Unfortunately, throughout the field workshops that we've conducted, we so far haven't had any participant in that sense, but maybe we also need to reflect on ourselves at why that was actually such a case. And I think the point on neurodiverse is actually a brilliant question.
And of course, what is good about that framework is it reveals to you as a it reveals other perspectives, and no matter what perspectives you watch, but it's, I think it makes it more obvious, more feelable, maybe, yeah, when you for example, trying to explore the architecture of some building or building to come in that way, because you I think instantly you can notice a lot of things that in your ordinary life you would never think about, but in that case you immediately can explore that and like feel and understand and improve in final.
Yeah. And maybe also one thing to know is that I think it's a great question, but a social problem ultimately needs a social solution. The technology that we're introducing is just a means for us to explore together. So the key is participation. Like for instance, throughout the workshops, different cultural and disciplinary people working together, communicating together. And that's also a way to actually understand each other beyond watching just a film as well.
On the topic of participation, you mentioned, Selin has asked this question, you mentioned participatory data generation, and you touched on these concepts such as deep fake, AI, and the hyperreal. So Selin wonders how the intersection of these concepts would inform the navigator or user in the artificial world. And the example given is fake data generation by a contributor, for example, and the effect of that data when it is used by a user.
Generation by contributor.
I think it's what we were talking about like 10 minutes before. It's the answer is it's an open question, yeah, because we live in that situation of really high pace developing information systems and information generation, information collection, information modification, and it's always happening when you deal with technology. Each technology can be bad, can be good, and it can split on two different path routes, like atomic energy and a nuclear bomb, and they evolving together, and how actually they may interact, and how to prevent some fakes, because in some cases fakes are good. Yeah, like if you're doing some entertainment content, or it's a way to convey your idea, but so not all information should be like 100% proved and real. And the other way, yeah, it's if it's like politics and stuff, that and when at this field fakes appear, may cause a lot of problems. That's why a lot of like programmers and developers, they're working on the algorithms and mechanisms to actually catch the fake, or and how to deal with these fakes and separate them from the actual information.
Yeah, and I suppose the fake is the production that comes out of the data collection. And I suppose the question was referring to when you have this decentralized data collection, then there's obviously a sort of triangulation going on to make sure that the data is as you say, like what's the truth out there, and to sort of triangulate through different ways of collecting the data. I think there's another question that's related to that from Rishi, who asks, how do you think the participatory model works considering the digital divide? And I suppose slightly related is if you see that there is a different interaction pattern between developed versus developing countries, and that kind of touches on both your theme of digital literacy, but I suppose, yeah, just going to the heart of how do you deal in your work with the idea of the digital divide?
Interesting. I guess first I would question the concept of developed and developing country. I attend a lot of forums, symposium, international conferences that now refer them as global north and global south. But if you also look at how they set the boundary, it's not geographical global north or global south. It's a sort of, let's say, economy or cultural, political global north and global south. And interestingly, obviously, you would see most of the Western country in the global north and the rest of the world in the global south. And I would say that actually now we're in a world system that perhaps we should focus more on the flow as opposed to identities. So there will always be a constant exchange because of different fields level, like energy level, like entropy, right? So if we keep labeling that certain countries are less developed, then in a sense, we're also discriminating ourselves with another. So the whole current idea about this is about data transaction, it's about flow, it's about more exchange as opposed to labeling.
And for example, the developed and developing countries is also an interesting question in terms of like how fast internet is working. For example, in Russia, internet is faster than in Europe, and like work better. And because Europe has the infrastructure before, and it has to develop, and when you're building something from scratch is like faster and cheaper in a way. And there is it's a lot of it's like non-linear in that case. In case of how you can use technologies, how they actually work, and it's not all the time connected with this status developing, so on. And you know, like a lot of countries started to use the cryptocurrency as their currency, official currency, and it's something that, for example, Europe is like hard to make that decision so fast, but some of them already using that.
Yeah, so sometimes like being a developing country gives you this like possibilities to use new technologies, like to implement new technologies faster than you can do it in the developed countries. And also, like I always thought that and think that the limitations gives you like additional like struggle to make something new, something like develop some like new approaches to the things. And I think in that case, the developing cultures, they have this advantage because they need somehow to like find the way to access the internet, find the way to implement this or that technology in a very limited like resources. And I think it's like I think like the things that we are discussing in current, they are not like about like they are worldwide. Yeah, they can happen in any country.
I actually think Richie is asking a very, very important question here, that it's really startled us because it's such a big question in terms of equity, diversity, and inclusion on the country scale. And of course, Current isn't going to solve this problem because it takes the entire planet to do it. But I think it's a very important question to think about. For us, obviously, Current takes a more self-organization approach. So what it does is that it makes things easier to use, accessible, and just put it out there for free. So then people who cannot afford the market entry cost can even can also participate. But if a certain context, a certain urban context is in such poverty that they can't even have Wi-Fi, internet, or phone, then maybe the more urgent question is to solve food hunger or social mobility and other types of social problem that obviously technology cannot solve on its own.
But on the other way is like maybe it's not obvious, but it's how your institutes working. Yeah, for example, hunger problem maybe not shown in your country, yeah, because government is they not want you to see that they have some problems. And in terms of internet and freedom of speech and freedom of exchanging information, even if you're not taking the main channel, like TV channel, and say, oh, we have hunger problem here. But in terms of peer-to-peer communication, people can organize together just with messengers and make actually to form a force to affect the government. So it's yeah, it's a complex process.
Yeah, thank you. I suppose there's a question of sort of differentiated access to the actual hard infrastructure that is needed, and then we can have a sort of discussion about there's also global south in the global north and these sorts of discussions. But I think what you're pointing towards is these operations that are much more about open source and decentralized, and how the infrastructures can develop to incorporate these ways of working that are about decentralization and as you said, like looking into planning into the future with infrastructures that can allow for these decentralized ways of operating. And I think that's really fascinating. I suppose one question I had is, just touching on your intersections of various knowledges, do you feel there are any missing disciplines that your collaboration can draw on? And maybe there's some people in the audience that can join in.
Oh, nice question. Yes, we're always looking for collaborators, participants, and welcome any idea. Yeah, thanks for that question, Daniel.
Brilliant.
Missing discipline.
Yeah, I think it's always missing some other disciplines, and of course, for example, we don't really have somebody who worked closer with environment and nature conditions, and it's like another field of research. We kind of feel this. We can research internet and find like problems here and there, but of course there are more professional people dealing with that.
Great, thank you. I'm going to wrap up now. Sorry, Artem, you had the point?
No. Okay.
So I'm going to wrap up there, and thank you very much for joining us, everyone, and a big thank you to the Current Collective, provides Eli, Yadzi, and Artem for your time and thought-provoking presentation. Just to announce, Inclusive Spaces is back on Wednesday, 11th of May. And we're going to touch on that first question that we had. So the title is Mental Health and Social Justice in Urban Outdoors, with Dr. Liza Griffin from the Bartlett Development Planning Unit and Kay Polaris of Mapping Futures. So sign-up details are in the chat. I think they are, and we hope to see you there. So on that note, thank you very much, and goodbye from me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
So much.
Thank you. Bye.